Albert Schweitzer. It is a man's sympathy with all creatures that truly makes him a man, until he extends his circle of compassion to all living things. Man himself will not find peace. Please rise as you're willing and able for our next hymn, Morning Has Broken, number 38 in our gray hymnal. Our speaker this morning, Moji Aga, formerly Mojtaba Aga Homadi, is that close? Smith. Yes, perfect is the enemy of good enough. He has taught cross-cultural psychology and counseling courses for 9 years at California State University, Hayward. More recently has taught cultural diversity and conflict resolution studies at the University of Phoenix and the University of Arizona. He is also the founder of the Mossadegh Legacy Institute, MLI, and which is endorsed by Noam Chomsky. You may have heard of him. Moji is an Iranian-American Sufi monk, a bilingual poet and essay writer, and author of a book on how to quit smoking, naturally. With an extensive education and experience in cultural psychology and conflict resolution, he has been a peace, justice, human rights, interfaith dialogue, and Mother Earth activist for over 3 decades. In other words, he's kind of a slacker. He has founded many nonprofit organizations and projects, including the International Institute to Study Climate Change in the Islamic World, and the Universal Coalition for Interfaith and Intercultural Knowledge and Action, whose active project, the Simple Peace Vigil, is an around-the-clock integrated vigil, so far being observed by over 15,000 vigilers around the world, symbolically integrating the causes of peace, justice, and Mother Earth protection. And Sunday, March 2nd, 2014, marked the day 4,000 of this ongoing green leaf in a glass of water, profoundly simple vigil of profound awareness.
They say 4,399.
Okay. And Mr. Aga's sermon is titled, There Is No Other, an Easter Unsermon, the mysterious connection of Easter, Islam, nonviolent circles, Noam Chomsky, and you Ewers. And it'll take about 30 seconds, I guess.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Easter. Now I want to introduce you to you, my co-presenter, my right hand. Hello, everyone. Happy Easter. This is a UU church. Anyhow, I was planning to use my right hand a lot more, except that my left hand got stuck with a mic. So I'm going to, retire my right hand. Oh, you did it to me again, didn't you? I really didn't mean it, darling. I'm stuck with you. I wish I could be stuck into some other body. I would like everybody to raise their right hand. See, if we, the right hands of the world, would unite, wouldn't it be nice if we could not be stuck with the bodies to which we are stuck? Wouldn't it be great? Shouldn't we have a free republic of right hands? Because we are separate beings than the bodies to which we are limbs, right? No, we are not. Oh, enough already, enough. So anyhow, I'm going to sum it up there. The idea of there is no other. See, we end up thinking of people, other religions, other races, other ethnic groups, even parts of our body, if we are estranged from them. A lot of times we hate certain parts of our body. And but the fact remains that we are interconnected in the most profound way that is imaginable. Because, in the words of the late Carl Sagan, we are all made of star stuff. Star stuff essentially is an expansion of that old four element: fire, water, earth, and the four. And now it has grown to 100 whatever in the periodic table, right? It's essentially a conglomeration of a glob made of the same stuff that makes everything. And then, about 30, 40 years ago, we realized, oops, what we see in the whole universe, which is we are part of, this is a distant cousin, this mic. It's made of star stuff. You're made of star stuff. I'm made of star stuff. Even my kind hosts are made of star stuff. Thank you, Judy, and the family, and Valerie, and others. And I thank this church to be hosting this. And then Thursday, the Circle of Nonviolence meeting right here. The flyers are all over. If you don't come, I will not forgive you. Anyhow, about 30 years ago, we realized that we are only 2% or 4% in the visible universe. The rest, 98 or 96%, is made of dark matter and dark energy. And the only way we became aware, by we I mean human consciousness, the only reason that we became aware of that we are just only 2% or the 4% of the whole story is because through mathematical computations, scientists realize, oops, there is a big lump of stuff missing. So indirectly we became aware that which we know as everything is only 2% or 4%. So to me, as a Sufi monk or a dervish, that's sufficient lesson for humility. To not be so sure that we know everything. Because we are just like chicks that have just broken the eggshell. and we're going chick, 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 chick. That's a Persian chicks. And we're just, looking around the world, say, wow, I never knew such a world existed. And it's about 100 years ago it's only 100 years since we have something called, worthy of being called a microscope and a telescope. So we better, those among us who have figured out everything, whether religious or not, better take a few pills of humility, just from what we know. And the more we know, the more we realize how much it is we don't know. So there is no other, because we are interconnected in the most primordial sense of that we can imagine. Every moment we are breathing in new molecules of oxygen. See, take a breath. Now exhale. Now take another breath. See, these molecules of oxygen that you just breathe in are different molecules than the one in the previous breath. So you are born again. Oops. You are born again in this breath. And the universe, as soon as you took that breath, and those molecules of new molecules or different molecules of oxygen went into your bloodstream, therefore it affects and it is affecting your consciousness in a very, very minute way. The universe is becoming a different universe because a little part of it has gone through a little transformation. So with that in mind, when I look around, all I see is other clumps of star stuff. Here's a young clump of star stuff. And so I, as a monk, as a Sufi, as whatever, I call other people brother and sister. And I feel guilty because brother and sister does it absolute injustice. We are far more interconnected, but the problem is that we constitute other because our ego wants to say, ooh, I'm real. And every spiritual tradition that we know of, whether Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, whatever, eventually they get down to that the transitory phase of life is only that. It is transitory. It's going to end. Everything that is born and will therefore die is just here, just for a while. In the same way that, take another breath. See, you just became totally different than 2 minutes ago. Because you breathe in, well, in this case, less oxygen and more CO2. Because we are sitting in this closed atmosphere, getting warmed up. And you know what I'm talking about. Climate change. And people say, oh, climate change is not human caused. Saying, oh? Are you part of the 2% of the pseudoscientists paid by oil companies to try to create doubt about the obvious thing that we've been pumping CO2 in this closed atmospheric environment and therefore it's getting heated up? I mean, duh! But then, that's called obvious scientific reality. God's reality, it is absolute, except that there are some people who call themselves scientists, cast doubt. Why? Because they think that the money or the power or the attachments in the Buddhist tradition, the attachments that they have are so important so as to sell their scientific soul to the highest bidder of oh yeah, you just create some doubt so that we can just for a few more years or decades, we can destroy Mother Earth. Who cares about 60 years from now when this young man is almost my age, a little bit older? 60 years from now, what kind of world are you going to be living in? I don't know, but I am on the road in this tour called Circles of Nonviolence and Collaboration for you and your children and your grandchildren. Can you imagine his grandchildren? But it's going to happen. Well, I mean, it may not happen to him, but anyhow, think about 100 years from now. Our life was not supposed to evolve in such a way that when we think of 100 years from now, we are filled with dread, as opposed to, yes, 100 years from now, people on this planet and possibly elsewhere are going to be a lot smarter, a lot more aware of who they are, and they build for the next thousands of years a much better Earth or much better planet for their universe or universes. But we don't think like that. We are filled with dread because we fall in love with that which we constitute as not me, it's other. Now that could be called Muslims these days. See, the mysterious connection between Easter and Muslims or Islam. What is the mysterious connection? There is no mystery. The connection is that people who call themselves Muslims and people who call themselves Christians and they celebrate Easter. By the way, I do celebrate Easter, although it's a UU church here. It's essentially in Islam and in Christianity, in Judaism, in Hinduism, in every spiritual tradition you can think of, there is a method by which somehow a messenger came, or a bunch of messengers came, in order to translate the message of another being which we constitute as God, however, whatever, what that God or that being or that awareness or that consciousness is. And now, after a while, because they were humans, they need to go back. So there needs to be a narrative about how they go back. And they go back to something better. I thought of this metaphor. The post office, the postal vans that come to your neighborhood to deliver the message. Where do they go at the end of the day? They go to the central post office, right? Now, all vans who deliver messages eventually go back to the central post office. Eventually, all vans around the world who deliver messages, postal letters and whatever's, they end up going to the central post office of their country. And once in a while, there is this thing, I don't know what the name of it is, but it's an international body of the postal workers for all post offices around from different countries, because they're doing the same thing. Starting from 3,000 years ago, where my Persian ancestors created the first post office in its primitive form, till now, the basic function of the post office has been deliver a message, then go back to the post office. So they come together and they talk about their experiences, their problems. And so I was thinking, okay, God, quote unquote, sent some messengers, quote unquote, and these messengers, they get so much grief from the followers. So in the central post office, God, as the central postmaster, is sitting in a circle of nonviolence and collaboration, and is doing a group therapy session. In the group therapy session, there is Muhammad, there is Jesus, there is Moses, there is Buddha, there is all of them saying, "You have no idea how much grief I get from the so-called followers that I got." And so, anyhow, you know the Sufi fool, the wise fool called Mullah Nasruddin. Some people know him as Nasruddin Hoja in the Turkish language. Anyhow, he's a wise fool. And there are lots of stories about Mullah Nasruddin. He was an old man with a donkey, and he was a simpleton, except he said a very profound thing. Anyhow, there is one story in which Mullah Nasruddin, the youth in the village have been making fun of him because he is like a simpleton, he's an old man and has a donkey. And so they've been harassing him and teasing him about, but then they decide, let's really put him on. Let's just, for a week, go to him and say, "We are so sorry, we are so young and ignorant, and you are an elder, we have been misunderstanding you, please forgive us." So anyhow, for a whole week, they really put him on. And by the end of the week, he figures, okay, these kids, they've been, very young, they don't know much. So he forgives them, and he really takes himself seriously. And then they come and say, "Oh, dear Mullah, you are so wise. Could you tell us what's wrong with Islam?" Ooh, what's wrong with the religion of Islam? And he goes, Muslims. Okay? So, going back to the Central Post Office, God presiding as a psychotherapist, a group therapy session leader. And so there is Prophet Muhammad says, "Oh my God, oh my dear Allah, you have no idea. These people, they call themselves Muslims, yet they don't understand that the story, for example, the story in the Quran and other Abrahamic texts that I created humans from mixing a bunch of clay with water and made a little figurine out of it, and then they blew some spirit into it." That's the same story, the Abrahamic traditions story. It's just a metaphor for something far more, advanced than they could have understood at the time. So I had to, in the same way that Rumi, the Sufi poet, says, when you are speaking with children, open the language of a child. So Prophet Muhammad is griping, is full of angst about Muslims taking seriously and literally that God got some clay and mixed it with water and made a Adam, and then later from the left rib of this Adam came Eve. And then, for paradise, they create, essentially Prophet Muhammad says, look, this is West Asia and North Africa. It's hot. So I wanted to explain, if you don't do good, bad outcomes will follow. So I figured, okay, these people like gardens, paradis in Persian, paradise. So I figured, okay, the best way to communicate good outcomes would be in the other world, the outcome, there is going to be a garden. It's so cool. It's shaded with big trees, beautiful flowers. And then there is milk and honey and everything they like. And then they throw in 72 virgins. Just to make it even more attractive. The whole thing is a metaphor for something far more sophisticated that they could ever imagine. Same thing with hell. In this case, Moses is griping, or Jesus, saying, look, hell is a place in West Asia and North Africa. It's hot. You know what I'm saying? So hell in that area of the world is is hot. So I figured, okay, when you get burned, really, you suffer. So a good way of, explaining that if you do bad outcomes will follow, is to say you're gonna be burning. But they took it seriously. Oh God, they took it literally. That oh yes, there is hell, and then there is levels of hell, and lower levels and higher levels. They transpose their own petty little imaginations of hierarchy to saying certain people will go to the lower levels of hell, certain people will go to the middle levels. I mean, the whole thing about, Jesus says, the whole thing about lower and the middle and the upper and the east and the west is our consciousness. Because our consciousness is directional. We look at the world in terms of time, space, culture, i.e. situation. So when we are situated either we look up or down or whatever. Omar Khayyam, the mathematician, poet, Sufi, he has this rubai. He wrote the rubaiyat, the quatrains. In one of them he says, the fact that you are looking up at the sky, the problem is that you're too short. Okay? There is no up or down. There is no other. You are too short, so you look up. So if we understood, so anyhow, going back to the same Central Post Office group therapy session, let me give you a Jewish example from my fellow Jewish brothers and sisters. They, Moses says, God, I was trying to explain to them, don't be cruel and don't boil a calf in its mother's milk. I was using this as a metaphor for ultimate cruelty. You first, get a cow, get the milk, and then either kill the cow or in front of the cow you slaughter the calf and then you cut it up and then you boil it in the same milk. Pretty cruel, right? So Moses says, I was trying to tell them I made a story because humans, including the Israelites, my people, they like stories, they like narratives. And so I made up a story and I wrote it in the Torah, and the whole thing was made that don't be cruel for God's sakes. They took it literally, and now they don't eat cheeseburger. And they have kitchens in which there is a firewall between the sink where the meat dishes are washed and the dairy dishes are washed. So anyhow, this poor Moses is really having some nervous breakdown about the word being misunderstood. Why? Because we humans constitute other. We constitute things out there because we are in here, whereas there is no in here or out there. In that famous philosophical parable, if a tree falls in the forest, and nobody is there, does it make a sound? And you, well, somebody is getting the humor. So anyhow, does it make a sound or not? Who cares? A tree falls in the forest, and we are so egotistical to think of, if we didn't hear the sound of it, it didn't happen. Some atheists brothers and sisters say, the scientific method that we've discovered with these primitive little instruments, and we measure things, that which is called supernatural, we can't measure, therefore it doesn't exist. And I'm saying, wow. it doesn't exist just because you don't understand it. And then they say, I've heard that some people have said, don't call worship associate in this congregation, church, whatever. Call them moderator or something, because they want to just, I cannot, believe me, coming from the Islamic Republic of Iran, I understand the UUers' aversion to hyper-religiosity. You know what I'm saying? When religious people fall in love with their book has guided them, sometimes has done good, they worship it as opposed to worship the messenger, the postal postmaster. The whole point of the postal service is to get the message of the postmaster to the recipients, right? But we fall in love with the van, the post office van. And we say, this post office van brings us the message, therefore it's holy. They call it the Lutheran Church, the Shia mosque, the Sunni mosque, the Jewish synagogue. All it is in the words of Buddha. Buddha got a bunch of his followers into a boat. And so they go across the river. And they get on the solid ground. Everybody is down. Buddha pushes the empty boat down the river. They freak out. Oh, Buddha, why did you do that? Like, Buddha says, the boat did its job. Let it go. In other words, you don't need to remain a Buddhist if you have understood the message of Buddhism. Don't fall in love with the message of Buddhism, because it's only a message. So we end up constituting different kinds of others, national other, religious other, ethnic other, imaginary other. We go internally, we create all kinds of divisions because we need to make sense of the world. In order to make sense of the world, we need to create stories. The stories that we tell and the stories of people who look like us or who belong to the same tribe, quote unquote, if they say the same story, we say, yes, you are my brother, you are my sister. Then those other people who say different kinds of stories, they must be enemies. And I'm saying, whoa, look how much war and violence and toxic competition we create because we constitute other, because we need our petty egos need other in order to feel superior. And let me give you one example. By the way, all of this was very carefully scripted. Anyhow, there is this wonderful, now late Professor Edward Said, who was a contemporary of Noam Chomsky. And Edward Said has this book called Orientalism. In Orientalism, Professor Said, late Professor Said, in somewhat dense language, lays out the structure of how we constitute other, us versus other. In the case of the Orientals, the Westerner constitutes himself or herself as superior, civilized, American exceptionalism, we are the chosen people, you name it, are words. And then the other the Oriental savage is constituted as savage. So as to then do colonialism, and then Edward Said takes Karl Marx to task. He quotes Karl Marx in the Letters from Exile, where Marx says, you know, the British army that is doing such horrific violence in India, you know, it's so lamentable that those poor Indians are being subjected to such horrific, you know, treatment by the British army, the colonial army. But Asiatic savages need that kind of treatment in order to become civilized. And this is Karl Marx. This is no Ronald Reagan. Okay? So the idea of us versus other is not something that is, you know, my Persian ancestors, they, you know, there's, in today's Persian, there's an expression, when somebody wants something too much, i.e., you know, they think they're better and they think they're, you know, they want something for themselves, they're asked, do you think your blood is redder than others? And that goes back to the ancient Persian belief, sometimes mixed in with Zoroastrianism, that the people of Zoroaster, followers of Zoroaster, who were Iranian in origin, had redder blood. And you thought South Africa and the color of skin going berserkly stupid as a measure of inferiority or superiority is bad? Redder blood. So anyhow, Zoroaster in the same session with God, he says, "Oh God, I didn't mean when I mentioned about redder blood as symptom or as indication of if you do good intention, good speech, and good action, your blood becomes redder," and I meant it as a metaphor. Because back then, iron wasn't too available, so anyhow, he's trying to remedy a situation where people with primitive consciousnesses or awareness of the world are they can see, oh, somebody's blood is redder, and poor Zoroaster is trying to use that as a metaphor in order to say, clean up your act, say the right thing, and more importantly, think non-violently. But then they take and they build a caste system out of it in ancient Persia. So anyhow, the mysterious connection between, I think we covered Easter as a, going back to the Central Post Office. Hello, Jesus. And Islam, we covered that, I think. And Circles of Nonviolence and Collaboration, which is endorsed by Noam Chomsky. And I have, no, just wrap it up, yes. They gave me the mic and they want me to shut up. You viewers are so simple-minded. No, I'll wrap in 2 minutes. Let me see if I can find my trophy. What is this? Machine guns? Signature of Noam Chomsky. I got it on March 15th when he spoke in Tucson. I've been traveling the country since May of 2013, creating circles of nonviolence and collaboration, and so far 58 of them, some of them are in the Phoenix area, and one of them is meeting, this area's circle is meeting on the 9th. And the purpose of these circles of nonviolence and collaboration is to bring together people who are engaged in peace, justice, environment, human rights, women's rights, LGBT, I mean, you name it, there are issues. There are issues that we are engaged in, except that after 3 decades of being an activist in every imaginable realm that you can think of, or maybe not all of them, I noted that we are doing beautiful work, but separately from one another. The idea of these circles of nonviolence and collaboration is on the basis of nonviolence as a common core to begin to ask a Socratic question about collaboration. How can we remain who we are, continue doing what we are doing, but do our work in such a way that we build bridges of collaboration and understanding across cause and community. And I'll finish with this. One project that came out of one of the circles in Fountain Hills, by the way, and I found Joe Arpaio lives in Fountain Hills, and I got totally creeped out. Anyhow, this project was, what if Christians, Jews and Muslims, once in a while held their weekly worship sermon or session or whatever in the house of worship of the other. So soon we're going to have, in the context of Abrahamic peace tent interfaith exchange of oneness, hello, oneness, duh, our worship, your house, whereby hopefully some of my Jewish brothers and sisters are going to go to the local mosque to do Shabbat. And some of the Muslim brothers and sisters are going to go to the local church to do their Friday prayer. So the reason that I haven't used UU as one of those houses of worship is because UU is not churchy enough. And I want to break the taboo with the churchy churches, synagogues, and mosques. Thank you. Happy Easter. And you can take some to give it to others between now and Thursday.
Since we are running a little late, I think we will skip the final hymn. As we extinguish our chalice, please join me in reading our mission statement as a demonstration of our fellowship, our support for one another, and our commitment to the wider community. We agree to God's safe place, celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. Thank you to our musician, Joe Cleland, to Diana Barker for our chalice lighting, to our greeters, Elizabeth and Lori, and to all others who are helping today, and of course to Moji Agan. We leave you with these oft-quoted words by Mohammad Mossadegh, the Gandhi of Iran. If I sit silently, I have sinned. Please join us next time.